My experience with Tales of Symphonia is similar to my experience with another game I finally played this year in Persona 3. I tried playing both of them at one point because of how well liked they are for series that I'm interested in, and then I dropped both of them very early on. Granted, I dropped them for different reasons, the reason for Symphonia being that the port was awful, and when I finally decided to try and suffer through the frame drops and bugs again, the game wouldn't even launch. This year though, new remasters of P3 Portable and Tales of Symphonia gave me the kick to finally finish them, and while Symphonia Remastered is by no means a good release, the game itself is good, so here's why you should play Tales of Symphonia. Tales of Symphonia is the fifth installment in the action RPG Tales series and is notable as the first 3D game in the series. The game was developed initially by Namco Tales Studio and published by Namco. Some of the later ports though were done after Namco had merged with Bandai. The first release came for GameCube in 2003 in Japan and 2004 in the West. The game also got a PS2 port in 2004 exclusive to Japan. A sequel titled Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World came out for the Wii in 2008, and that game, along with the original, was packaged together for an HD release called Tales of Symphonia Chronicles for the PS3 in 2013. That release came to the West in 2014 and was later used as the base version for the Steam port in 2016. Finally, the most recent version, Tales of Symphonia Remastered, came out in 2023 for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. This is the version I played. Tales of Symphonia across all of its releases has sold more than 2 million copies, making it the best-selling Tales game of all time. The game is also credited with launching the series' popularity in the West and trending the Tales series to the style of storytelling the series became known for, with standard fantasy tropes with a twist. Critically, the game itself has received praise on almost every stop, but the porting process has not always worked out in the game's favor. As I mentioned before, the remaster suffers from quite a few issues. The PC port was unplayable for me, and somehow the original is still the only version that runs at 60 frames per second. Despite the lackluster treatment of the game in subsequent releases, it is undeniable that Tales of Symphonia is a foundational part of later Tales games and has a long and varied legacy, including many adaptations to other forms of media. Our protagonist is Lloyd Irving, a book-dumb but big of heart and skilled with swords kid raised by a dwarf in a small village. One of his closest friends in said village is Colette, who just so happens to be the world's one and only chosen one, called to complete a journey of world regeneration. This world, though, is controlled by a group called the Desians, who hold the human population in fear with their human ranches and superior power, and they have it out for Colette. In order to keep her safe, Lloyd insists on coming on the journey along with his best friend Genus to accompany Colette, Genus's older sister Rain, and the mysterious bodyguard Kratos on her journey. Unsurprisingly, there is more going on than our heroes initially know, and their journey will bring them to unexpected places and meet many different people. Lloyd, though, has one goal: to protect Colette. Can he accomplish the task, and if so, at what cost? While later Tales games have a more interesting cast of characters and some thoughtful world building that Symphonia doesn't have, I can't hold it against the game that pretty much originated those tendencies in the Tales series. The cast is still a charming group of characters with some standout moments across the story for most of the cast. I enjoyed getting to know them and seeing how they grew as a group through their adventures. The world-building strength comes in the idea behind the world. I won't spoil anything, but the way the world is constructed and works is fascinating and has given me some ideas on how a society would develop in those unique circumstances. I don't think Symphonia took advantage of some of the greater possibilities to build the world, but not every game has to be an 80-plus hour adventure with extensive background details. Symphonia has a world with intriguing elements and a core group of characters that are easy to care about, so I'm satisfied on that front. Symphonia has two different modes of exploration: the overworld map where you travel between locations and may encounter enemies, and the in-location areas where you traverse a city/town or dungeon. None of this should be unfamiliar to a fan of RPGs. Symphonia does give some nice later game travel options, although fast travel is limited to the point of not being there at all. The rides you can take are fast enough that this isn't a problem most of the time, so long as you know where you are going. Granted, the boat is a hassle to control, so I was glad that we didn't have to use that for too long in the game. That could just be based on version though, but on the Switch version, I hated the boat. The dungeons are far more puzzle-based than I'm used to when it comes to Tales games. Abyss also had quite a few puzzles, but not to the same extent as Symphonia. Pretty much every dungeon had at least one puzzle, if not several. There were a few I did enjoy. I'm not opposed to some nice puzzle dungeon design. Unfortunately, most of the dungeon puzzles felt to me like pointless barriers to my progress. The formula was this: go into the dungeon, find a place to change the function of the sorcerer's ring, solve a puzzle based on that new function, rinse and repeat. A lot of the puzzles would also set off treasure chests on the side if someone wanted to take an alternative path. These items were nice, but also would inevitably set me back sometimes all the way to the beginning of the puzzle, making the whole ordeal more tedious. Symphonia's dungeon design really rubbed me the wrong way. Some felt entirely trial and error, and I didn't feel they enhanced the feeling of the game. I mainly was hoping that this next one would be the last one before I could get onto the end of the dungeon, or at least a break for some combat. Combat is done in the linear motion battle system that defined the Tales series for most of its existence. Your party of up to 4 characters takes on a series of enemies in a linear battlefield. Your characters have TP to use for various techs to use against enemies. Most of these are attacks, but there are a few heals on top of that. There is also a standard elemental system with certain enemies weak to certain elements which you can exploit by using particular techs or equipping a weapon with that element. There is not the free run mechanic in battle that I loved having in Abyss, but you still have ways to get around enemies with a jump and guarding mechanic. Side note, the jump is most effective when using full manual control of your character. Semi-auto requires you to be still and then hit a button, which you rarely are in battle, and auto obviously doesn't do it at all. While it's not the deepest combat system, I enjoyed the battles for what they were, mainly because I think there was some decent enemy diversity. I felt like there were actually differences to how the enemies fought depending on if they were flying or on the ground, big or small, fast or slow, and then the boss battles were typically tough tests. I couldn't just breeze through battles, but they also didn't take overly long. It's not anything spectacular, but I enjoyed the feeling of going back to a battle system that I was mostly familiar with and playing around with it again. Equipment is fairly standard party fare, but there is one additional area to equip that is unique to Tales of Symphonia: the EX gems. These gems can be equipped up to 4 on each character, and there are various levels of strength. They can improve various aspects of a character, from increasing their stats to increasing more nebulous concepts like overall movement speed. There is plenty to play around with in this system, and you can compound the effects with the titles you can give each character as well. Honestly, the system isn't the most straightforward, so I didn't explore it in as much depth as it could be, but from what I did, I saw tangible results in my favor. Just make sure to check it from time to time if you want to get an additional advantage. The presentation section will unusually be split into 2 sections this time. The first dealing with what the game is like regardless of port/remaster, and the second part talking about the port performance and the like. Visually, the game is standard fare for the time. The animated cutscenes are few but are nice to look at. The character designs I'd also say are mostly positive, with distinct looks that fit the style of the world. The music was alright, pretty much what I expect from earlier Tales games, with some really solid tracks and big moments, and then the rest is easily listenable to without being too remarkable. Skits are of course here in their familiar form, although unfortunately without any voice acting. Definitely made me miss the Tales games with voice skits. It just adds so much to the experience overall. What voice acting we did have was solid. Many of these performers would go on to gain greater fame with performances afterwards. It's always fun to see where they develop their skills prior to their big roles, or even alongside them in some cases. There were a few moments that I would attribute to some odd directorial choices, but the main issue with the voice acting is that there's not enough of it. I'm including this critique in this section because I can't tell if this is an original problem or port issue, but the sound effects in the game are unnecessarily loud and obnoxious. Sure, this includes noises that are usually annoying in games, like alarms, but even passing the windmills in the windmill town, those sounds were way too loud and drowned out even the music. I don't know whose job audio balancing was on these sound effects, but they failed hard. The UI is okay for the game. The menus are generally easy to navigate, but they do rely on the menus within menus, which always makes things more tedious. The UX is pretty much what I expected, with a few of the modern conveniences found in today's RPGs notably absent. There were a couple instances where the game gave you the choice to jump between locations connected by a dungeon after you completed the dungeon already, but that was the extent of quality of life features. It would have been nice if the port/remaster decided to add those quality of life features in. However, I have experience on 2 versions of Tales of Symphonia. The Tales of Symphonia PC port, which was infamously bad to the point that Durante, of Trails in East PC ports fame, had a whole article on how the port let fans down, and Tales of Symphonia Remastered for Switch, which is somehow even worse. The one reason I played Switch over PC, though, is at least Switch let me play. The PC port won't even boot up on my computer anymore, so point 1 for the Switch version. Otherwise though, it, like all the ports, but not the original GameCube release, is stuck at 30 FPS. Resolution options are limited on PC, on Switch loading times are longer than any previous version, they completely removed the breaking glass initiating combat animation, and in spite of all this, the frame rate still drops and chugs at various times. Tales of Symphonia has never done well with ports, but the PC and Switch ones are just an embarrassment. If you can play the original on GameCube, that's what I recommend, which is very rare for me to say. Otherwise, for modern platforms, you may in fact be better off with PS4 or Xbox One. Those remasters aren't good by any means, but they are better than Switch and PC. However, with all that said, I did manage to play and beat Symphonia on Switch. If you have no other way to play, it is possible. Plus, it didn't work for me, but maybe you can get the fan fixes to work on the PC version, so hope is not all lost for prospective Symphonia fans. It's very disappointing Symphonia has received such shoddy treatment from Bandai Namco. In spite of Bandai Namco's efforts, I had fun with Tales of Symphonia. If you are a Tales fan but haven't given Symphonia a try, I recommend it. The gameplay is certainly a throwback, and I hope you enjoy the puzzles more than I did, but it absolutely has the charming characters and the fun world to spend time in that you hope for from a Tales game. Maybe one day there will be a proper remaster with increased quality of life features, 60 FPS, and no crashes or slowdowns. For now though, I hope you can find a version of the game that works for you and enjoy. Before you go and try to find that though, if you are feeling generous, a like on this video is the best way to show that generosity, or at least it's tied with commenting, sharing, and of course subscribing to keep up with the channel. Whatever you choose to do though, I thank you for watching the video. Have a great day, and happy gaming.